We are back here on WINQ AM Brattleboro. This is Green Mountain Mornings. I'm your host, Olga Peters, 10 minutes past the top of the hour. And yay, Chris Mays is back from vacation. I missed you, Chris.
Missed you too.
Did you have a good time away?
Yeah, it was really nice.
You're feeling refreshed, ready to go?
Yeah, pretty much. I enjoyed every second off, when I was in Cape Cod for a few days.
Good. Well, yeah, we forget how sometimes as journalists we need to literally unplug and let our brains kind of reset.
Yeah, I realized I still needed to check my email once a day just because I felt too stressed if I would just think about it a little too much if I didn't, so that would give me at least a little peace of mind.
I understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to come back to like 500 emails. That's always rough.
No, and that's probably exactly how many I would get.
So now that you're back and you're refreshed, what are some of the things on your radar?
Well, I'm just wrapping up interviews with some of the senators as we head into the primary. I still have to talk with one of the incumbents, Jeanette White.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm putting those interviews together into a story to preview the primary election next month.
Fantastic.
Tonight's the Brattleboro Select Board meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't anticipate it being a very long one.
I don't know. We're going to have to take bets on that one. I think it might.
Yeah.
It could go long.
Yeah. I'm interested to hear the downtown Brattleboro Alliance's, the semi-annual update.
Mm-hmm.
And, Stephanie Bonin has been the executive director now for a little while, and she's been at a few meetings, so it'll be interesting to hear what's going on with them and some of their plans.
Mm-hmm. And what projects they've moved forward and that type of thing.
Yeah.
Have you taken advantage of the bag sharing program downtown yet?
No, I haven't. Have you?
Not yet. Because luckily, so far, I have remembered to keep a reusable bag in my purse.
I've remembered one time, and that's one time more than many others. But I also just grab a few things at Hannaford and just walk back to my office. So sometimes I don't take a bag.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just careful to bring my receipt out so nobody questions.
Receipt's here.
Yeah.
Waving it as you go by.
But it was amazing. One day there were plastic bags, and the next day they were gone at Hannaford. And it's just amazing because of how many plastic bags you saw there.
That's a really good point. That's a very good point.
Bob, my coworker, Audette, just came back from vacation, and he took a picture, and it's been a few weeks now that the ban's been in effect, but he was amazed by it too.
Huh? What struck him by surprise?
Well, he just took a photo of it, and it just said, "Do you see something's missing here? Congratulations, Brattleboro," or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so like he took a photo of Hannaford's checkout counter or something?
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, that's right.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. What else is on? Anything happening in the Deerfield Valley that you'll be paying attention to over the next couple weeks?
Tonight they're talking about the marijuana sales ordinance
right.
in Dover, so I'll be checking in with the police chief tomorrow and the select board to see how the vote went. I already know one select board member is not going to vote for it if it's going to prohibit medical dispensaries, because he did some research. He talked to his sister, who's a nurse, and she told him about how it helps a lot of patients.
It's true.
So yeah, I'll be watching that.
Well, I say it's true. Because I've had people in my life who have been helped with medical conditions with marijuana. So, yeah, it is an interesting distinction, medical marijuana versus recreational. And that's, I think when you've talked about the ordinance on this show, I think that's one thing we've talked about is, will they draw a distinction between the two?
Yeah.
Well, fantastic. Chris and I have to go to break, but we will talk about some more issues in depth coming up. So stay tuned. This is Green Mountain Mornings on 100.3 FM, AM 1490, 21 minutes past the top of the hour. I'm your host, Olga Peters. Welcome back, Chris Mays from The Reformer.
Thank you.
We were talking a little bit before the commercial break about the select board meeting that's happening tonight at 6:15. in the Municipal Center, or you can watch it live on BCTV. What are some of the other things you'll be paying attention to tonight, Chris, when you cover this meeting?
There's a 5-year contract with Living Memorial Park Snow Sports for the ski hill here in town.
Mm-hmm.
So that's up front in the agenda. And then they're going to be talking about some paving projects. They're hoping to get a grant, and then there's a nearly $200,000 paving project that will be discussed on a few streets here in town.
I think the Rotary is also asking either for a grant or that the boards accept a grant on their behalf to redo some of the game areas at Living Memorial Park as well. I think that's in there.
Yep.
And-
They're gonna do a disc. They're hoping to get some grant funds for the disc golf too.
Right.
There.
Disc
Yeah.
golf. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you saw that yet, but here's something. Most of the items on the agenda, with the exception of the DBA semi-annual report, are pretty perfunctory. They're like, here's the capital paving project. This is why we need it. This is why we need the money. Yes, no, that kind of thing. But there is, near the end of the agenda, there's a discussion about how write-in candidates are handled in the town that Tim Wessel has brought forward. I find that could potentially be interesting because right now, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but don't write-in candidates have to basically declare so that the town clerk knows they want to be a write-in candidate?
I'm not 100% sure. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there is a procedure for write-in candidates in the town that Annette Cappy, the former town clerk, had asked for.
Okay.
And partly, I believe it was for making counting ballots easier for the folks who are doing that, for the election people. But
That makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, because it's a busy office, the election office in Brattleboro. But it looks like they may want to bring that up for reconsideration.
Yeah, you'll get a few just one-off names. Just someone wants to be funny or just doesn't know
Yeah, Mickey
who they
Mouse.
want. Yeah,
Yeah.
but then then you start seeing a name pop up more and more, and you have to start taking it more seriously.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I suspect that will be an interesting discussion tonight.
Yeah.
Now, there was recently a change in staffing at the town of Brattleboro, and that is Sue Fillion has stepped in as the planning director.
Yep. Sue and Rod have both been in the planning office for almost about 10 years, give or take, and she's going to now be the planning director. He's left for a job in Norwich, and she's going to take the reins as director. She says now that the land use regulations have been around for about 3 years now, she's going to start to look at them and see if they're working, if they need to make little tweaks. She's not anticipating anything major with those tweaks, but she does expect that will be one of the first things she'll discuss with planning commission members. She's also encouraging people to join the boards, local boards and committees, especially the ones she works with in the planning office. The Development Review Board, the Planning Commission, the Conservation Commission. And so that was one of the things she wanted to get out there when we had our interview.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they just wrapped up a new town plan update. Nothing huge there, but
It was more of a few tweaks here and there, if I remember correctly.
yeah. And Sue and Rod were both part of the team that won an award for the town plan previously.
That's right.
Yeah, so she said she's excited about taking on the new position.
So while there's no huge projects on her desk right at this moment, except for the land use regulations, does she have other things that she's planning to change in the department or any initiative she wants to start?
Well, there's an ongoing project. It's a flood mitigation project.
Oh, that's
at
right.
Burge Street.
Yeah.
And so she's helping to facilitate that. They've done some of the work. They got to take some fill out, and then they're going to turn it into I I think what did she call it? A passive recreational area.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think you're going to see a playground there or anything, but people could sit down there and hang out there in the
Have
future.
picnics or.
And that will take some of the pressure off the downtown areas that are known for flooding. So
Right.
yeah.
Now, this passive recreation area, if I'm remembering the plan correctly, is this the one, if you're standing on William Street facing the Whetstone, there's a patch of unused land. By unused, I mean there's no houses on it, kind of on the other side of the Whetstone.
Yeah.
Okay. And that you access through Burge Street rather than from William Street.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. So that's moving forward.
Yep.
And where's some of the fill going to come out?
I'm not sure about
Okay.
that. Yeah, I'm not sure all the details yet, but I expect we'll hear about it in the coming months.
Yeah. For the sake of listeners who may not have heard about this flood mitigation plan, it actually is for the entire area from roughly the Co-op and Preston parking lots all the way up to that piece of land we were just talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they have plans that over time they would like to implement, like changing the Preston lot into a community space rather than a parking area is one of the plans. And putting in a footpath, I think, is another.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't remember it all, but
It's so unfair to Chris sometimes with these interviews because I am on coffee number 2 or 3.
this is my third too.
Oh, shh! Don't tell them. I was gonna tell them I was all caffeinated and. Well, I look forward to seeing what Sue does with the planning office. I think it's really exciting that she has moved into that position.
Yeah.
Now, what about quickly, since we're talking about water, Wilmington had to close Lake Raponda briefly, didn't it, for some E. coli issues?
Yeah, it was about 2 days last week. The health officer in town, he's also the zoning administrator, Craig Olson. He checks the water weekly, and he noticed the levels were higher than the state maximum for E. coli.
Mm-hmm.
And so he closed down the public beach. He put a sign up, and we talked about how what goes on then. And so when he has a high reading like that, he'll close the beach. He'll tell people you shouldn't go in the water. He doesn't say you must stay off this beach. He'll let them hang out and sit there, but he suggests they don't go swimming.
Mm-hmm.
He can't stop people from accessing the water other places on kayaks, on stand-up paddle boards. But once he has one of those high readings, he'll go back and check it every day after, get the results, and then open it once they have a reading that's better. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And this is something that folks in his position do across the state. Mm-hmm. What are some of the things that lead to higher E. coli levels? Did you have a chance to talk about that?
Well, it's usually it can be from animal feces, and it also has to do with the way storm water runoff comes into the water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I remember talking to a river scientist once, and they said right after a rainstorm, sometimes levels will peak a little bit because things have been washed into the waterways.
Yeah.
Yep. And is the beach back open?
Yes, it was.
That's good because, we have some yucky days coming up.
Actually, the day I interviewed him, he called me later in the day when he got the results back, and this was a Wednesday and Thursday. It had been closed, but by Thursday night, he was going to take the sign down, and it was going to be back open again.
Just in time for the weekend. Good timing.
Yeah. Yeah, he said people were a little disappointed, but they weren't angry or upset. They just were happy he was actually doing
I think that's information people kind of want.
Yeah.
Well, hello and welcome back to Green Mountain Mornings on 100.3 FM, AM 1490. I'm your host, Olga Peters. 40 minutes past the top of the hour. Hey, Chris Mays from The Reformer.
Hello.
Hello. Talk to us about a lawsuit that the Wilmington Select Board just signed on to around tax money, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, they're hoping they're going to join this class action lawsuit. They're seeking additional federal money through the payment in lieu of taxes program.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was this county in Utah, which a judge ruled was owed a little bit more money. And so counties and municipalities have been invited to join this lawsuit. I'm still waiting to hear from town manager Peter Elwell in Brattleboro about whether they're going to do this. I don't see it on the agenda, but that doesn't mean that, they're not exploring joining this either. I was given a spreadsheet of a bunch of state-owned properties that fall under this program, and they don't think they're going to get that much money, but they don't have to pay attorney's fees to join this. So they thought, why not? They might as well see what they can get out of it.
Well, this is really interesting. And I just wanted to clarify, because I'm not sure I heard you correctly. This payment in lieu of taxes, it would apply to both state-owned properties, and would it apply to like federal parks or federal lands?
I'm not sure. In Wilmington, they were looking at the state-owned properties.
Okay, thank you. This is very fascinating because quite often when I talk to folks from Brattleboro, there's the whole hubtown issue about how, our taxpayers are carrying a burden for being a town where a lot of people kind of commute to, and that sort of thing. And I know when Gartenstein brought up the issue, he focused a lot on commuters. However, if you look at Brattleboro's tax base, a lot of it is nonprofits, and they are governed by the state payment in lieu of taxes formula. And I know that what you're talking about is slightly different. You're talking about specifically state-owned property. But the payment in lieu of taxes formula needs an update, and it hasn't received one in quite a few years, I think.
Yeah, I forget exactly when, but it was in my article.
And you're right. It's one of those things that it dictates what towns would receive from state-owned properties in the form of property tax. And if that's out of date, then you can imagine the amount they're getting may also be out of date.
Yeah.
What's the next step for Wilmington? They've joined the lawsuit.
They haven't signed it yet. They have until September to do so, but the select board voted unanimously to join it. So I guess then they'll wait and see what they hear back.
So they have to contact the core lawyers on this lawsuit,
right,
and see if they fit.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Well, it will be quite the thing to hear.
Yeah.
And what about anything new happening with the Hermitage?
Well, last week I got my hands on the first report of the receiver. So he went in and he gave the court kind of his idea of what's going on there. He said he was approached by a member of the club, one of the people who pays for a membership to go skiing at the Hermitage Club, and this member told him there's a group who's interested in leasing the ski area for this upcoming ski season. And so the receiver is allowing this group to come up and take a look at the land and the property, but he also said he can't facilitate a lease, and so he's leaving that up to the court and the bank that that launched the foreclosure action against the Hermitage Club to see what they want to do. Elsewhere in the report, he notes that there's $300,000 worth of lift maintenance work that needs to be done in order to open up for the next season.
Wow.
So that's not exactly unheard of, I'm told, from people in the industry.
Okay. Because to me, that sounds like a lot of money.
It is when you say, that needs to be done right now,
Mm-hmm.
or pretty soon. But when you're talking about lifts, you're talking about a year. When you're running lifts at a ski resort, you're working on it throughout the year.
Mm-hmm.
When they stop spinning in the winter, there's still workers out there testing it and running it to just keep it going. And
Mm-hmm.
and the report in the report, the receiver says he's come to be aware that Vermont standards for running lifts are pretty. I don't know if you would say strict, but there's a lot of things they have to follow, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
guidelines. So so he basically said the bank isn't really gonna go for doing those repairs. So it would be hard. It would be hard for me to imagine that this lease deal would work out, but that's just speculation on my part.
Yeah.
um,
Interesting, though.
the other part that was probably a blow to some people,
Mm-hmm.
employees as well as members and guests, was a section on the golf course.
Hmm.
They've been working on it because, like the lifts, if they go too long with deferred maintenance, then there can be some severe setbacks. So they've been working on the golf course, keeping it groomed and all, and but the receiver has asked them to scale back those efforts because they're not going to open,
Mm-hmm.
unless there's a sale soon,
Mm.
which there has been mention, not in this report though, but in the court, of two potential groups being interested in buying it. I haven't heard any new updates. The last thing I heard was from the interim president, and he said the founder, Jim Barnes, is still very optimistic about finding a group to take over
Hmm.
ownership.
So that's interesting. And forgive me, Chris. I know you've mentioned this on the show before, but I tend to forget because I didn't take notes. So here, I'll pick up my pen again. Early on, when it kind of came to light that the Hermitage was having some financial issues, I thought that some members had come forward, wanted to buy the club or the business. Jim Barnes at that time was not ready to let go of the business. It sounds like maybe he's had a change of heart.
Well, I think he would still be part of the ownership model
Okay.
in these instances. I'm not sure how the lease would work.
Mm-hmm.
That was just thrown out there last week, but I believe with the group that there's a group that approached the Hermitage. They were interested.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was kind of Jim would be involved in that one.
Gotcha.
And then there was another group who approached the bank, and I'm not sure if how that would work exactly.
Okay. And these offers, would they include just the ski area, golf course, townhouses, like the main, what I consider kind of the main core of Hermitage, or would it also include some of the outlying restaurants and other buildings that?
Well, that's kind of the question, because there's a large number of the properties in this foreclosure action,
Mm-hmm.
but then there's some that aren't, and
Mm.
those are still part of the Hermitage Club and Jim Barnes ownership. So
Okay.
so there would be a lot of different things for these parties to talk about and figure out.
Yeah, I'm impressed, Chris, with you following this issue because there's so many kind of fine points and ins and outs. I would be lost.
Yeah, I think I went to civil court maybe once or twice before this whole thing started, and
Mm-hmm.
now I'm there a few times a week, and there's a lot to learn, and it's fun and interesting to learn about these things, but it also can be pretty daunting.
Yeah. What have you learned that really kind of surprised you the most in this process?
That's a tough question. I mean, for me, it's as someone who maybe wants to own property in the future, it's just, foreclosures are real, and
Mm,
the bank will come and take your property away, and there are different rules for homeowners versus business owners. You know, the bank is quicker to take property away from a business than they are somebody who's living on the land,
mm,
and that's their home, and maybe they lost their job.
right.
There's a little bit more leeway. I think there's 6 months for somebody to redeem their property before the steps start to go to public sale for a homeowner. But with a business, I think they have like a month of redemption,
Mm,
and the courts can change that if there's a reason. Or I know with the White House Inn,
mm-hmm.
the attorneys on both sides were working it out and trying to avoid having to go to a public sale through foreclosure. And this is a separate foreclosure action. It's not involving Berkshire Bank, which is part of the bigger one with the ski resort and the golf course and 4 inns and townhouses. This was just one inn. So
Right.
yeah, it was interesting to look at that versus the big one, the
Mm-hmm.
one that the bank's attorney called probably the largest foreclosure action in the state of Vermont in history.
Wow, even more so than something like the EB5 issues up in the Northeast Kingdom?
I mean, those I don't know if I'm not sure about those going into. I'm
Oh,
not sure
right.
if how. Yeah,
They may have gone through a different legal process.
yeah.
Good point. Wow. Oh, dear. Well, I hope everything works out as well as it can. Chris and I are out of time, but I'm going to head you off to commercial break, and I shall return soon.